You can see that seam right there. From this portion up, you're going to have the fine filter. So there'll be another filter inside of this. They'll be connected together. So when we take it out, they'll be all one piece. And there's some O-rings that seal those. Then in the front portion of this is what we call the flushing chamber. The flushing chamber is where the water will come out and go out, but it also has the drive unit inside of this. So what happens with this filter is you're going to have 7 pounds of, there's two things that will happen. 7 pounds of pressure difference between this side and the clean or the dirty side. When 7 pounds of pressure happens, it sends a signal to this pressure switch right here. Notice on the pressure switch, green, and then it has red. When it's in the red, that's 7 pounds. All the filter companies use 7 pounds as their magic number. It's enough buildup that we can actually get pressure differential inside of the body and suck the debris off of it. So 7 pounds is what we want. It does not adjust. So this device is just getting, it's basically a dry contact in it. So these can go bad, and I've had some of them go bad in two years, 3 years, and then some in the last 15 years. One of the things is to drain the water out of this. If you drain the water out of this, it will last a lot longer.
How often?
When you, for draining the water?
Draining the water out.
At the winterizing.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
And if this does ever go out, I've got a spot up in Idaho that just rebuilds them. If you buy them from Amiad, it's just like buying something from the dealership. It's more money. But we can send this up to a place called Precision Pump, and they rebuild these, and it's half the money. So if that ever happens, we'll just do that. You just send them this piece, and they'll rebuild it, send it back. There's really all there is inside of it is a diaphragm, and that diaphragm connects up, and that's what sends the signal over to the controller. So when that happens, the 7 pounds hits, this sends a signal over the controller saying, I need to flush. When that happens, there's 4 D-size batteries inside of this. This is a DC solenoid. So you guys have probably dealt with DC solenoids. DC solenoid only needs current to open it, and then to close it, it sends the current back. It doesn't hold it open. So the battery should last you a full season, depending on how often it goes. This does have an indicator. If the battery goes low, it'll start to beep, kind of like what your fire detector or smoke detectors do. So when that signal comes over, this solenoid right here will open, and then when that opens, what that allows it to do is it pushes this chamber open, and then the water will come out of the valve. This does not have a valve. Like your old ones over here had a diaphragm valve, just like your Rainbird valves. It would open up and close. What happens on this, as the water comes out of it, and if you want, we can pull this open so you can see this as well, because it's good to see what seals this all up. So there's no diaphragm in there. There's just 2 rubber seals that open it. But when that opens up, the water comes through the nozzles back through it, sucking the debris in, and there's an impeller in this, and then that's what turns it, and that turns the whole thing. And this is just like a piston on a tractor that will allow it to pull forward, and then it will stop, and then it will pull back. So we'll go through a flush and show you that. The other thing that we'll do is we'll do by countdown, and we'll go through the timer. But right now it's set at every 4 hours, and it's counting it down. So it will flush no matter what if this does not catch it. So this is a normal operation. So we can come over to this and turn it on manually by coming over to the manual button, holding it for about 3 seconds. That opens up, water escape, goes down, that impeller's going. That's 1 stroke up, so it just went upward. Now it's going back down. The downward stroke's a little bit longer than the upward. That water coming out of it is releasing the water in this piston, is what it's going to do. So it's always going to drain water out of that.
What are the mechanics in there that are causing it to make the grinding and the vibration and whatnot? Is that the impeller?
It's the impeller. So basically like a pump impeller is what it's doing. So when that opens up and this valve opens, all that water pressure is now going through just the nozzles of the filter. When we open it up, you'll see. So that goes into the hollow shaft, which is connected up to this point here and flushes out.
The first filter has, you said, holes about that big.
Yes,
Stuff
quarter
that
inch.
doesn't, quarter inch,
Yep.
smaller. Stuff that doesn't get through the quarter-inch holes could be sticks.
Correct.
Right?
So every once in a while, this would need to be checked.
Well, are they also going to fit through that 2-inch release?
They're not. So this has to be manually cleaned back here.
It does.
Yes.
All right. And
Now,
how
how
often
often?
depends on your water, right?
Correct. What type of debris you're getting through this. If
How
it's
big of a pain is it to
you'll
clean
see.
that up?
You'll see. It's really quite easy.
All right.
Talking with Devin at CUP, they have upgraded some screens in their pump station, so you shouldn't see any sticks.
You
Okay.
shouldn't. If they do come through, one of the things that if it's organic material, so the algae or the stringy stuff, that will push through that.
Right.
So even if it's a big old long string of algae in there, it will push through and it will be basically chopped up, if you will. We have a couple of these in Lehigh City where I have actually pulled out in the core screen 4-foot long little strings that came through. But they'll push through and they'll just get chopped up.
Where does this drain?
That drains out to the road in the culvert.
So that goes
Storm
out
drain.
and over. This one, we'll just keep an eye. We did put a pressure gauge on this. So you remember how I was talking about the pressure, where I was concerned about the pressure during the flushing. So Eric and I, before you guys came, we wanted to see both of these filters flushing at the same time, what the pressure would go to. This one dropped to 55,
58 out of 60.
and that one dropped to 50 out of about 58. So with both of them working, there's not a lot of flow going on right now. You're still above the 30 pounds of pressure. You need 30 pounds of pressure to keep these things running properly. And that's where I had that optional pressure sustaining valve. And a pressure sustaining valve could go here if we run into problems. If it doesn't have enough pressure, it doesn't give you enough velocity through those nozzles to clean the screen off. But if we can maintain this 50 to 60 pounds, then we're going to be really good. It'll be just fine. So let me show you the operation of the controller so you can just understand this controller. This is a solenoid, just like what you find on a control valve. On top of it, this is also a three-way selector valve. So if this controller wasn't working right and you couldn't get this to manually flush, you can actually turn this valve on top and get it to flush outward once. When I turn it back, it will flush it on the inward stroke.
There's no need to mess with that though, unless
Unless the batteries are dead.
Unless the batteries are dead and you can't get it to manually flush and you want to flush it manually. That's what you would want to do. My concern here is if any kids come around, if that gets turned to this position, this does not flush now. That is a closed position. So there's three settings on it, and if you all come up here, you can kind of see there's some lettering on it. On this side over here, there's an O for open, a C for close, and if you can, I don't think you can see on this side, this is the auto position. So when it's in this position right here, that's the auto. That means that this is going to run first. This is the open position. If it gets put into the open position and not put back, it will not flush either. So that's something to keep an eye on whenever you're maintaining it. If it doesn't flush,
Magic switch.
we keep it on there. That's how they're designed. I'm trying to think if there's a way to bypass that, but there really isn't. So it's just something to keep an eye on. If it becomes a problem, maybe a fence around it or something might be something
You could
simple.
redesign it, just put a lock on the switch.
Or some type of box over this. I don't think that it should be a problem. Hopefully it won't
Or a
become
little
a
ring
problem.
or something.
But that's if you want to do it manually. Then you come over to the controller. There's really only 3 settings on this controller, and that's why I love this new one. So right now, when we go into this controller, I'm going to pull this off so you can kind of see this a little bit better. This is just a little protective shell. We'll put that back on. So this controller can do multiple types of filters from Amiad. It is pre-programmed to do Filtomat. So it's set up right now for a Filtomat. And there's different settings in there that they do. The next thing you see here is the time. So this is the countdown. So when I just did the manual flush on the controller, it didn't reset it off of this manual, but when I did a manual here, it reset it. So it will count down. If this device picks up the pressure switch and it sees the pressure differential and it flushes, it will reset that. If this goes on time base, it will reset it to 4 hours. Then this is very important right here. This is the universal sign for delta P, which means pressure differential. So the little triangle. So that means that it's going to go into flush with this device, and then the T means time. So first it will be this, then T for time. You can actually have it just run by time or pressure differential. Amiad's recommendation is always to run it in the pressure differential and time. Just because if this goes bad, then you have a timer that will pick it up afterwards. That's why we went to this instead of just doing a rinse controller. You can see what's going on. So the next thing, the next menu, so to go through the menu, you hit this arrow button down. That gives you the hours. So how many hours is between flushing. Right now it's pre-programmed at 4 hours, and I'm going to show you something where we're going to change that. The next screen is the best part of this. As a maintenance company, this is what you want to be watching all the time. This is the flush counter. It will tell you what it flushed off of. Manual, pressure differential, or time. Why that's valuable is that we don't need this to flush if it doesn't need to. So if it's going off of all time base, why do you need to have it time base? We want it to go by the pressure switch mostly. So to be able to tell what it's doing, you get to the screen and you push the arrow button. So out of those 116 times that it was flushing, I have flushed it manually 6 times out of that. If I hit the arrow button again, that's what the symbol means right there. That's manual. And we have a manual just for this. It's a 50-page document for just the controller. Hit it again. This is very interesting. So Eric and I noticed this. This is the pressure differential. It's reading 0. So this particular filter on this side has only gone into time flush. So I would like to see this number higher here. Then the next screen is 106 times with time. So that leads me to believe, look, we just need to up the time on this. So we're going to change this to every 8 hours and see what it does, because you really want to see it in that pressure differential first. Because if it's flushing when it doesn't need to, it's just more wear and tear that you don't need on it. And that's all you've got on that. If we hit that button again, this shows you the duration of flush. On this particular filter, you cannot change this. So this setting here is really not even necessary because it's going to flush. This is called a Gallet relay here. That's what releases the water in this chamber. And that's what allows it to have this speed up and speed down. So really never needs to be changed. We just put 10 seconds in there because that's how many seconds it should take to go up and down. So the 10 seconds, you'll see when we flush this, when I go on manual again, it will stop. And that depends on the pressure. If your pressure goes higher, it will go a little bit faster. If the pressure is lower, it will go a little bit slower. So we always put it at 10 seconds. And then back to the menu. And to run a manual, you have to be in this menu here to run a manual flush. So if I push this again, notice what it will do. It will do the countdown of 10 seconds. So it starts the 10 seconds, opens up, goes back, and then it will stop before that 10 seconds. Waits, and then it sends it back down. And that's your normal flushing. There are some hidden features inside of this that you don't need to mess with. Basically, there's some, like, if there's a pressure spike, this will delay. So if this gets into the red, it needs 5 seconds before it will turn on. So just in case if something turns on and off too fast and this spikes, it doesn't flush it all the time. When you go to fill this up in the spring, this is very important. Do it very slowly, because what you want to do is you want to maintain pressure in the filter. If I was to come over to this and your main line was completely empty, and you go ahead and just start opening up that main line, full blast, you open this one up, what I would suggest is you would open up this one. So this would be closed off, this would be opened, and you would only click it down about 2 clicks. And the reason for that is you're going to maintain pressure in the filter itself and fill the line up slowly. If you do not, and you open this up all the way, it will see a pressure differential and it will just keep flushing constant. It'll just go and go. Most of the time, I'm sure when you're filling this up, I don't know if you guys did it this year, you go slow on these anyways when it's a big line like this. It could take a half a day.
Yeah, we learned that this year. At least a half a day.
Just take your time on it, because that will keep that pressure up in both filters on this. Utah State Hospital does that. They take about a full day to fill up their lines. But if not, it will just flush. And that's when you're doing it and it's going in a constant flush, that's the reason why. Just back it off a little bit and control that flow a little bit more. I can leave this on or off. What do you guys want?
Doesn't matter to me.
Here's another warning. We learned this on the last one. Let me grab my...
Want to be in the document?
No.
Yeah. Ben was here.
Are you winterizing these right now?
I don't think so. The water hasn't been turned off.
Oh, okay.
So these levers lock, so some kid doesn't come over and yank on it.
Doesn't look like anything locks. You can open the panel and kids can start pushing
I'm a little
buttons.
worried about
These-
this.
What does this do?
Yeah, they...
They haven't been messed with.
I'm thinking maybe fences.
An
So we need to work
inexpensive
into that
chain link
budget.
fence around it could be beneficial.
Mhm.
Yes. The only thing you'd want to make sure to do is have some type of gate or some way to access this, because when you pull this out, you've got that much screen, so you got to pull it out this way. When you pull it out this side, there's not that much room. You only need about 12 inches. The thing I wanted to show on this one is this little screw right here. I wanted to show you the batteries real fast. So the batteries are inside of this right here.
Oh, okay.
But what I want to warn you about is when you tighten this back down after doing it, do not over tighten. There's big old bold letters in the manual. This is a watertight, not waterproof controller. So as long as this little brass grommet stays in there, what happens if you over tighten it, that grommet can come pop right out. I did that on one and I learned my lesson. So that piece right there, if you just you get it tight, you do not over tighten this. So when you're redoing the batteries, watch that. So once it's snug, that's all you need to do. That is waterproof. So even if this got left open, it's still waterproof. Watertight, not waterproof. Gotta remember that. Keep it down, keep the sun off of it. That's what I would recommend. Any other question? Oh, kind of keep an eye on this pressure on this. We can put another gauge on there as well, just to keep an eye on how much pressure differential you've got. Do you guys want to hurry and pop one open real fast?
I don't need it. If you guys
Let's
want to,
do it.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Open up the back.
Let's open that one up.
You want to show them how to change the time.
Oh
And
yes.
I'll start
Yeah.
stripping this one.
Yeah, let's open that one up if you don't mind. So on the time, because we do want to change that. Now on that particular timer, that one had 82 times, or no, 40 times with pressure differential, and the rest were time. I'm not sure why. I don't know why that one, and that was set at 4 hours. So could that one have more flow going through it? Maybe, but with the loop line, we don't know what the flow rate is. So to change the time, I just hit the arrow button down on the bottom, and this is my time. And I push over, and I can just increase it. I want to put it at 8 hours for you. I think that's a good reasonable. They set it at 4 hours because they're usually a little bit finer filtration. And then just scroll back through, back over to.
So would 8 hours be for full season? Would you recommend?
I would.
depending on the-
Yeah, so kind of adjust it. So in a day period, if one of you want to come over here and just look at that counter, come over to the counter, you can reset the counter. I'd have to read the manual to remember how to do it, but you could find out how many times it's flushing in that day period. If it's flushing 4 times a day, then the 8 hours is about what you want it to be at. Because you just want it to equal out, so if the pressure differential's hitting it, that's what sends it into the flush. I just don't want it to flush too often. That's when you get more wear on it. So keep a very close eye on this. If you need to adjust it in particular times of the year, do the adjustment. I'd rather go all this than by time. The time is really only a backup for you. Back on there. Trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, winterizing it. For winterizing, anywhere where you see these little plugs, pop those plugs out. Then any of these tubes here where water can sit, release that water out of it. Get all the water out of the tubes. Then on this front side of it, there's a plug on the very top here that's blue, and there's a plug on this side. You want to drain all that water out of this front side, and that's it. It's pretty simple.
You don't have to open it all up.
If it was me, I would open it up and I would take out the screen, and I would take the screen and pressure wash the screen
Okay.
and keep it in a safe place. If it was me, I would.
Oh, so you wouldn't put the screen back in?
No,
when-
just put it in a nice secure place where it doesn't get damaged. I've had people put it in a garage and then it falls over, or just keep it in it will not hold up to a bunch of abuse. So we'll get that one apart over there.
So
Now,
you take the batteries out of that as well?
I would, yes. That's another good idea. Take the batteries out, take them out. You'll see these the numbers on here. These actually hold up in the weather pretty well. So if you ever have to replace any of the tubing, and they're color coordinated, you can see some of the red markings with some of these in the green. So they will stay on there. If not, Eric's got the manuals. I don't know if he's got the manuals over to you yet.
No, he must have them still.
So the manual will show you exactly where all this tubing goes. I also have a PDF of it, so I'll probably just send that over to you.
Great.
So you have a PDF file of this and
You can
all the
forward
parts
that to
breakdown.
me, then I'll put it on
Yeah,
the
I'll
website.
get it.
That would be really good to just have it there, and I'll give you the manual for this and for the full filter. And also, I will highlight the parts that I would recommend to watch for. When we pull that apart, we'll see what parts are in there that we want to take out. So let's go over here now.
Before you guys go, what about a nylon strap that we wrap around the box with a lock on it?
You know what I
The
think?
handles
in
have
here?
locks, have lock locations in them as well.
I think I'd put a fence around it.
That would just be so
Fence,
ugly.
Zero escape.
I don't want a fence. That's just yuck. I mean, I hear what you're
Not-
saying.
Not that these are really, easy on the eyes themselves.
A chain link fence would just be even worse, and I would not want to.
I wouldn't
screw
go
up their
chain
view.
link. We can't. I think chain link is against
It's
our
illegal
HOA
anyway.
covenants.
Yeah, we
We'd have to go